Japan sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, one of the most geologically active regions on Earth. Four major tectonic plates meet directly beneath the islands. Japan experiences over 1,500 earthquakes per year. And yet, look where Japan's cities are. Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe, all built directly over major fault lines. 38 million people live in the Tokyo metro area, sitting on top of the junction where three plates collide. So why would anyone build the world's largest city in one of the most dangerous earthquake zones on the planet? Because geography gave Japan no choice. Japan is an archipelago of 14,125 islands, but most people live on four main islands: Honshu, Kyushu, Shikoku, and Hokkaido. The country is roughly 378,000 square kilometers, about the size of California. But here's the problem. 73% of Japan is mountainous. Only about 27% is flat enough for cities and agriculture. And most of that flat land is on the coast, directly on or near fault lines. Japan has 125 million people living on limited usable land in one of the world's most dangerous geological zones. So why did they build there? Because that's where they could build. Look at Japan's elevation map. The darker colors are mountains. The lighter colors, coastal plains and valleys, are where people live. Now overlay that with population density. See the pattern? Japan's major cities are all on coastal plains. Tokyo on the Kanto Plain, Osaka on the Kenai Plain, Nagoya on the Nobi Plain, Fukuoka on the Fukuoka Plain. These plains are the only large areas of flat land suitable for agriculture and urban development. And they're all on coastlines, which means they're all on fault lines. Here's why. Japan exists because of subduction. The Pacific Plate slides beneath the Philippine Plate and the North American Plate. This collision creates volcanic islands and forms the Japanese archipelago, but that same process creates flat coastal plains where sediment from rivers settles over millions of years. The only significant flat land in Japan exists because of the very geological forces that make it dangerous. So Japanese civilization faced a choice: live on dangerous coastal plains or try to survive in steep mountains. They chose the plains. This pattern goes back over 2,000 years. Early Japanese settlements formed on the Kanto Plain, Kenai Plain, and other coastal areas. Why? Because that's where you could grow rice. Rice agriculture requires flat land and water. Japan's coastal plains had both rivers flowing from mountains provided irrigation, and flat land allowed for paddies. Mountain regions couldn't support large populations. Look at Japan's historical capitals: Nara on the Kenai Plain, Kyoto on the Kenai Plain, Edo on the Kanto Plain. Every major capital was built on a coastal plain. Every major capital was vulnerable to earthquakes, but there was nowhere else to put them. When Edo became the capital in 1603, the Tokugawa shogunate knew the risk. Edo had been destroyed by earthquakes before, but the Kanto Plain was the largest flat area in eastern Japan, and it had access to Tokyo Bay for trade. The geographic advantages outweighed the seismic risks. Japan's cities have paid the price repeatedly. The 1923 Great Kanto earthquake killed over 100,000 people in Tokyo and Yokohama. The 1995 Kobe earthquake killed over 6,000. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami killed nearly 20,000 and triggered the Fukushima nuclear disaster. Each time, Japan rebuilds in the same locations. Why? Because there's nowhere else to go. Moving millions of people to the mountains isn't feasible. The flat land that cities occupy is too valuable to abandon. After the 1923 earthquake, there were proposals to move the capital away from Tokyo. They went nowhere. The infrastructure, investment, and economic importance of Tokyo were too great. Instead, Japan rebuilt with better construction techniques. After Kobe in 1995, same story. Rebuild, improve codes, continue. After 2011, same pattern. Each disaster leads to better engineering, better early warning systems, better preparedness, but not relocation. Japan responded to its geographic reality with world-leading earthquake engineering. Japanese buildings use base isolation systems that absorb seismic shocks, flexible steel frames that bend without breaking, dampening mechanisms that reduce building sway, reinforced concrete designs, strict building codes updated after every major earthquake. The result? During the 2011 Tohoku earthquake magnitude 9.1, one of the most powerful ever recorded, very few buildings collapsed. The death toll was almost entirely from the tsunami, not from earthquake damage to structures. Japan has invested billions in early warning systems that detect earthquakes seconds before shaking starts, tsunami barriers along coastlines, emergency response networks, public education and regular drills, seismically isolated infrastructure. They can't prevent earthquakes, but they've minimized the damage. Tokyo is probably the safest place in the world to experience a major earthquake, not because it's less dangerous, but because it's better prepared. Could Japan have developed differently? Could cities have been built in less dangerous locations? The short answer? No. The mountains that cover 73% of Japan are too steep for large cities. Agriculture is limited. Transportation is difficult. Only small towns can exist there. Every significant flat area in Japan is coastal. Every coastal area is on or near a fault line. There is no safe place in Japan to build a megacity. The entire archipelago is seismically active. Japan's population is concentrated where geography permits it, not where geology prefers it. Over 90% of Japanese people live in urban areas, and those urban areas are in the 27% of the country that's flat, which happens to be the most earthquake-prone zones. This isn't poor planning. It's geographic necessity. Japan's cities are where they are because that's where cities can physically exist. So what does this mean for Japan's future? Experts predict a 70% chance of a magnitude 7+ earthquake hitting Tokyo within the next 30 years. Not if, when. The Japanese government has plans for a worst-case scenario. The big one, a magnitude 8+ earthquake directly under Tokyo. Economic damage could reach $1 to $2 trillion. Infrastructure would be severely damaged. Millions would be displaced temporarily. But Japan won't abandon Tokyo. It can't. Tokyo is the political, economic, and cultural heart of the nation. 38 million people live there. Relocating them is impossible. Compare Japan to California, another earthquake-prone region. California has the option to build inland away from major fault lines. Phoenix, Las Vegas, Denver all safe from earthquakes. Japan doesn't have that option. There is no inland that's habitable on a large scale. Every option is coastal, and every coast is seismically active. So Japan chooses engineering over relocation. Better buildings, better warnings, better preparedness. It's the only realistic solution. So here's why Japan built its cities on fault lines. Because that's where the flatland is. Geography forced Japanese civilization to develop in the most dangerous zones because those were the only zones where development was possible. Other countries can choose safer locations. Japan can't. The mountains that create the archipelago's beauty also limit where people can live. The tectonic forces that create earthquakes also created the only land suitable for cities. Japan didn't ignore the danger. Japanese civilization developed alongside constant seismic threat for thousands of years. They built with wood that flexed in earthquakes. They developed early warning systems. They created building codes that are now the global standard. Tokyo, Osaka, Kobe, they're not built on fault lines because Japanese planners were careless. They're built there because geography gave them no alternative. And Japan's response has been to become the best in the world at living with earthquakes. Because when your entire country sits on fault lines, you don't have the luxury of building somewhere else.